Hello. Let's see. I always end up. There we go. Hello, folks. Oh, that's very overexposed. Oh no, that's. Oh, that doesn't look too bad. How are we all doing? First of all, let's music. Where are we? My favorite. Make sure it's not too loud, because I want to be able to hear what's going on. There we go. Just chucking on the music. Wee bit of tunage. Good. There we go. Just sit in the background. Go. There we go. No. How are we all doing? You're all very welcome to this April AMA madness. You may have noticed something slightly different about my appearance. So I got a quarantine haircut by myself. I kind of figured I would just go a bit crazy, but in the fun, constructive way. And so I shaved my head. This was about 3 days ago, and I shaved it off with because I have a beard trimmer, so I just put the bare blade on, shaved it all off, and then I was like, well, while I'm here, I may as well just see what it's like, and I took a razor and just completely shaved it bare, and already it's growing back. So thank God for that, because I was mildly worried. I have a sneaking suspicion. That I might go bald in a couple of years, possibly. Who's to know? It's in some of the genetics anyway. But this looks relatively hopeful. I mean, like, yeah, obviously I've got that hairline there, but I mean, it all looks consistent, which is reassuring, to say the very least. Yeah. So what I've been doing, I've been taking a photograph every morning to see my hair grow back slowly and slowly. Like already, I don't know if you can hear this, but ASMR for you there. Like we already have hair. It's good. It's coming back. But yeah, no, because I always figured if I was going to lose my hair later in life, that I was just gonna shave it all down to this, and obviously keeping the beard, because I like my beard. My beard defines my face. But yeah, so these have been strange times. Or what's the what is the Hulk says? These are strange times. It's not strange times. These are something times. These are confusing times. Yes. Yeah, these are very strange, interesting times indeed. So, just to give you a little update for anyone, by the way, before we go any further, anybody tuning in later, after this is no longer live, if you wish to take part in these, you can do so by supporting me on Patreon. Go over to patreon.com/John D. Ruddy, and you can support me. It's every little bit helps to support this channel, to help me make more videos. There's stuff. Oh, that's very overexposed. There we go. I'll put him here. There we go. That picture, that little picture, is part of a grander puzzle, which I will be giving a little preview of, because that's what this is all about. It's all about sharing, because sharing is caring. I don't know. It appears to like be going a little bit yellowish. The screen. I appear to be going yellowish and then back into a more natural light. I don't know if that's showing up for you or if it's just me. I don't know. Let me know. But yeah, so I do these every month, and so if you want to come on live and chat to me and send me all sorts of comments, and I can answer all of your questions, support me on Patreon. So yeah, what I have been doing. So I got to the end of the massive map of Dublin project, which I had been working on. It was insane. I drew, for anyone who knows Dublin, I drew every building from Dublin Port up to Phibsborough. And yeah, and it yeah, that's a lot. That for anyone who's like, that makes no sense to me as a viewer. It's quite a distance. Like, you'd walk that distance in a couple of hours. But yeah, so that was fun. That was all for the Five Lamps Arts Festival, which we have been repurposing in different ways and different fashions due to the fact that nobody can congregate. Nobody can all come together at the moment and appreciate the arts. So we're all doing it online instead. So there's all sorts of different ways that we're doing that. As well, I just released a video yesterday on my other channel, Ruddy Does Stuff, of me playing Streets of Rage, the classic Sega Mega Drive. In light of the fact that Streets of Rage 4 is coming out, I do believe, tomorrow. I mean, full disclosure, I did not know that. Okay, that was sheer dumb luck. A friend of mine was playing Streets of Rage. They posted a picture of them playing Streets of Rage on Facebook. And I was like, oh yeah, I still have that video, which I have not posted yet. And as it turned out, then when I posted it up, well, because they were playing Streets of Rage in preparation for Streets of Rage 4. So yeah, so I play through the beat 'em up classic Streets of Rage, where, okay, I'll not tell you how far I get in the game, but as a child, I always played it in easy mode, and now I played it on normal mode. Normal mode is a lot tougher than easy mode. I'll just say that. So I get past the first level. Don't worry. Go check it out. Go check it out. Leave me a comment. Let me know how I did. Yeah. On other announcements, we have a new podcast. A new podcast, which is in the works. It's not top secret, but it's relatively secret. Still in the process of recording it. It won't be ready for another couple of weeks at least anyway. I'm wanting to get some episodes under my belt before, see me miming under my belt, because I'm super jealous of women's jeans. Because women's jeans come like right up to your belly button. And men's jeans don't do that. And I kind of feel it gives them an unfair advantage with regards avoiding builder's crack. Now, I know that women generally, for the most part, have different physique. Well, I mean, everybody has a different physique, but but still, I am jealous. So on top of that, new podcast. So that new podcast has the theme of Star Trek. Yeah. John D. Ruddy is going to be talking about Star Trek. So that's kind of exciting. I won't give you too many details, but let's just say I haven't watched a lot of Star Trek. So, I mean, you can kind of put two and two together. But keep your eyes peeled for that. But yeah, so here we are. And I have been working on the next video. And what I can do is I can give you a little bit of a preview as to what I'm working on. I mean, if anyone follows me on Instagram, I'm sure they've seen kind of bits and pieces of it, or on Facebook or on Twitter, because I post up bits and pieces of previews. But I have all of the artwork here. This is all of the artwork so far. I'm old school. I draw this by hand, and it takes a while. But what I can do is I can show you some things. Right, there's... Yeah, right. I have drawn several Anglo-Saxon kings. Several Anglo-Saxon kings. Let's see. Do you know what I'm going to do? I can hold them up. Do you know, I'm going to change the light just so you can have a better... Oh, that's convenient. Hold on. Or is it? Well, I'll hold them up backwards. I don't know if you can see this backwards or not. I'm seeing it backwards. Therefore, I'm actually able to read it off the screen, but it might be backwards for you. But just as a preview, because I don't want to be given entirely away. But here's King Cerdic, King Sinric. Some of my pronunciations may be slightly off, but I will have them refined before I record them. King Ceolin, King Ceol. Interestingly enough, Ceol is the Irish for music. King Ceolwulf, King Sinigils, King Quickhelm. Oh, there we go. There's a little animation involved in this guy. King Kenwal, King Penda of Mercia, Queen Siegsburg, King Esquine, King Centwine, King Kidwalla, King Ina, King Ithelherd, King Cuthred, King Siegbert. Wonderfully Germanic names. King Keenwulf, King Beortric. These names are a mouthful. And they're English. King Egbert. King Ethelwulf, King Ethelbald, King Ethelbert, King Ethelred the First. There were more than one King Ethelreds. Although, actually, there's... and then King Alfred the Great. But King Ethelred the First, because Ethelred the Second, I'm pretty sure it was Ethelred the Unready, and it's funny because that name, the nickname, Ethelred the Unready, was a wonderful medieval pun, because I think the name Ethelred is something along the lines of well prepared or like divinely prepared or something like that. I'm not sure what Aethel is off the top of my head, but it's something to that effect. And so Aethelred, the unready. Ha, you guys are so funny. It's good. Also, I can give you a little preview of this. So here we have the Seven Kingdoms. So we've got, can I even see that? We've got Mercia, Northumbria, East Anglia, Essex, Kent, Sussex, and Wessex. The Seven Kingdoms. And here we have someone in the corner taking notes. Oh, hello, Tiffany. Ooh, thank you. Yes, I'm used to it again too. This is probably this is the shortest my hair has been. It when I was a teenager, I used to wear it like this, not as short as this, but nearly as short as this. So yeah. But I'm very excited about this new video to share with you all. It should be ready in a couple of weeks. I mean, it's not like I'm busy doing anything else. This was kind of the frustrating thing at the beginning of the lockdown, because I kind of felt like loads of people online, and nobody actually said it, but I just felt like loads of people were expecting me to be able to just produce tons of videos, because it's like, all right, well, you're going to be at home, and it's like, yeah, but I did have other jobs to do from home, but thankfully now I'm able to. I should be theoretically be able to produce a lot more at the moment from home. I'm going to, let's see, well, because I've done Alfred. The most recent king I have gotten as far as is King Eadred. And I'm loving some of these names, like Eadred and what is it? Eadred, Eadwig. They're lovely. They're lovely. They're very old names. Sorry, I was distracted by a text message. But yeah, so I'm really excited in sharing that video with you. I will be going as far in that video, and I can tell you all now, I'll be going as far as the Normans. So the video will finish as William the Conqueror is preparing to cross the English Channel. So it's all the Saxon kings and some of the Viking kings as well. Some of the Danish. Some of them are Danish. Some of them are, I think, Eric Bloodaxe. I think he was Norwegian. I think a lot of them were Danish though, which explains a lot. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, the earliest story ever written down in the English language was about a Dane, and that Dane was Beowulf. But what I'm going to do for you now, folks, is I'm actually going to give you a little live preview. I'll read the opening. The opening 2 paragraphs, just to give you a little idea of what's in store. So this is subject to change. I may edit bits and pieces of this, but I thought I'd give you a little preview, and you can also see my method as I work. So I'm going to get some water first. Delicious. So, after the fall of the Roman Empire, Europe fell into chaos as various kings struggled for power and established their own kingdoms. As centralized Roman government fell away, local wealthy lords stepped in to protect and control the communities. The island the Romans called Britannia had been populated by Celts known many known as the Britons. They had been part of the Roman Empire, but as the Romans left, other cultures from Scandinavia and North Germania began to move in. One of these were the Anglo-Saxons, who were made up of Germanic tribes and were made up from Germanic tribes from Anglia and Saxony, whose culture took over the southeast of Britain. Their language, Anglo-Saxon, would go on to become the English language, and their culture would shape Britain for centuries. It is around here that the legends of King Arthur fit in, who, according to myth, fought for the Britons against many invaders, although much of that myth was heavily influenced and invented by the Normans much later, and other interpretations. Many future kings would claim to descend from King Arthur himself. And I'm just going to type in himself, because himself was not in the script. But sometimes when I'm reading it out loud, little words fit in. So you can hear how my voiceover voice switches on. Yeah. So that is the Anglo-Saxon. Any questions? Let's see. Any questions over in the Patreon? Tiffany, any questions in there? I love this tune. It is so chilled out, so wonderfully chilled out. Let me see. Posts. How do I get into this quicker? My computer is being very slow today, of course. I get some stage fright. Oh, it's getting very slow, right? I might actually check it on my phone, because it might be quicker to check it on my phone. Where am I? There we are. Okay, so where are we? Are you ever going to do a book video on Arthurian history? Well, interestingly enough, this video does cover it a little bit. I mean, the thing about Arthurian history is that a lot of it is fiction. A lot of King Arthur is I mean, there probably was someone somewhere, and this is kind of what I allude to, and you see it more when it's visual, of the historical figure of Arthur. Was he a king? Was he a great warrior leader? Who's to know? But he possibly existed in and around the 6th century ish. Very murky. But like all of the stuff that we know of Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and Lancelot and Galahad and Bedivere and not Brave Sir Robin. Brave Sir Robin came later. But all of that stuff, and the quest for the Holy Grail and all that kind of thing, that came much later. I mean, it is definitely something that I would be interested in doing at a later date. And I suppose there's a little bit more flexibility for me to do that because it's a myth. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be 100% historically accurate in that regard, at least visually speaking. Because the whole thing of what we think of when we think of King Arthur with the knights and the knights in shining armor and all that kind of stuff. So much of that, it's all 12th, 13th, 14th century stuff, and that it's like 500 years at least. It's 700 years later. Like, that's the equivalent of, do you know what that's like? That's like us taking a story from the 12th century and putting a modern slant on it. Like that's what it's like. And that's the same kind of time gap. it would be like us taking the Battle of Hastings, but setting it in modern times and applying modern sensibilities and um, uh, modern um, morals to Hastings, or that's an example. Not that that's necessarily a bad idea, but like that's how detached the King Arthur, or a lot of the King Arthur legend, is from the historical Arthur, if he even existed. Um, like I think the some of the oldest records of Arthur were from around the seventh or eighth century, where someone was compared to Arthur. It's like, oh well, he was no Arthur. So I think even at that point, Arthur was like almost like a legendary, like a folk figure, in that regard. Almost like Chuck Norris was in the 2000s. Um, King Arthur was the Chuck Norris of the 9th century. So I hear King Arthur has a fist underneath his beard. But yeah, although there are some who reckon there are certain details in the Arthur legend that very much could have come from uh, ancient times, like the whole process of taking Excalibur from the lake, or even pulling the sword from the stone, which I didn't realize until I started looking into this. In the original legend, the pulling the sword from the stone. Yes, Stephanie, you can make a meme of that. Just be sure who to credit. But pulling the sword from the stone, it wasn't Excalibur that he pulled from the stone. I think it was, or at least one of the legends, it wasn't Excalibur that he pulled from the stone. It was just another sword. Um, um, it was just another sword that one of the lords had placed in the stone. But what they reckon was the act of pulling a sword from the stone and having the might to pull a sword from the stone was possibly, how bronze was cast in stone molds, and that you would literally pull the sword from the stone. It's possible. But then the act of taking the sword from the lady in the lake, or well, she gave it. She gave it to Arthur. But then upon Arthur's death, he tells Sir Bedivere to throw Excalibur back into the lake before he dies, or at least before he is taken off to Avalon, where he sleeps, awaiting the time to return. But the act of returning the sword to the lake possibly comes from ancient times as well, because the lords would have had the money to produce the weapons, and maybe a lot, some poor folk who fought for the king or for the lord weren't able to afford their own weapons. So the lord was able to bestow them weapons, but upon their death, if they didn't own the sword would be returned back to the lord, as opposed to be passed on to their child. Like, it wasn't a family heirloom. It belonged to the a bit like in Lord of the Rings, where they're just handing out all the swords in, like, an armory. A castle has an armory where they make a whole pile of swords, where when a whole pile of people show up, they're like, here, I can fight. They're like, here's a sword. You're not relying on your people to have swords. You have all the swords. And also, if you're a lord up in a castle, you maybe mightn't want all of your peasants to have a whole massive armory's worth of weapons down there. You want to make sure that you have all the weapons in the castle. But yeah, so the weapons would be returned to the lord. But when the Lord or the king died, particularly a king, because the king seen that their power was derived from God, or the gods at that point, because we're chatting ancient times, we're chatting, like early Britons and, ancient Celtic Britain. And so their gods were the fairies, were, similar to Irish mythology. The fairies who live in the underworld, and not fairies as in little sprightly creatures, but like essentially like Tolkien's elves in Lord of the Rings are very similar to, particularly like the wood elf, the wilder Mirkwood elves are very similar to the kind of mischievous, unnerving. They're beautiful, but don't cross them, because that's a big thing. You don't cross them. Don't cross the fairies. You don't mess with the fairies. And like people to this day in Ireland have very strong um, superstitions about fairies. Um, and like there's fairy trees that are like these random trees sitting in the middle of fields that people refuse to cut down. The farmer will be like, nope, I'm not cutting that down. It's a fairy tree. And because the worry is, if they chopped it down, then it would bring bad luck, and the fairies would bring them bad luck. But back to what I was saying, so they reckoned that some of these lakes and these springs were gateways into where the fairies live. And so the kings, upon their death, once they no longer have use for their sword, the sword is returned to the fairies. The sword is returned to the gods and thrown into the lake. And there's a whole pile of places in England, because a lot of England was quite waterlogged at different points, and like a lot of it's now drained and like it's farmland, but a lot of it, in those earlier years, were very boggy, very marshy, and were traversed essentially along these long wooden causeways that people built. But there's tons of archaeological finds of people, of like just swords in where these lakes were. And they can't work, they're not, doesn't seem to be a burial. It doesn't seem like, it seems like a massive coincidence for a whole pile of people to have just dropped them. So archaeologists came to the conclusion that perhaps they were thrown in as offerings. So that is possibly where Arthur, the whole Arthur thing of taking the lake, pulling the sword, or taking the sword from the lake and returning it to the lake, came from. Although, interestingly enough, a lot of the myth, a lot of that ironically came from France. A lot of the, I think a lot of the Holy Grail stuff, and a lot of those kind of later Arthurian legends came from and were written in France. Because you have to remember, like during the time, like around the 13th, 14th century, there were bits of England and France which were the same kingdom. Like, what's his name? Richard, yeah, Richard the Lionheart. Like, he barely set foot in England. He was a French king, essentially. Like, he was the king of England because he inherited the throne. But Richard the Lionheart spent most of his time over in the Middle East for the Crusades, and when he came back, like, his home was France. It wasn't really England. Apparently, like, a lot of people reckon if he spent a couple of months in England, full stop, which is kind of funny. But yeah, and like the English kings for ages, like all the Norman kings, they were all French speakers, which explains why we actually, in the English language, we have this dual vocabulary, where there are words that we use that have Anglo-Saxon origin, but we also have words that have French and by association Latin origins. So you got the Anglo-Saxon words and the Latin words, and we actually the Anglo-Saxon words were because Anglo-Saxon was continued to be spoken by the peasants, and the aristocracy were like, even that word aristocracy is a Latin based word, um, and they were speaking French, and so there was this class divide of the poor people who spoke English or Anglo-Saxon and the aristocracy who spoke French, and because of this, we have words in English that mean the same thing but have a different connotation. Like if you take the word fraternity, which very very clearly comes from French and Latin, and then the exact same word, but it's the Anglo-Saxon root, is brotherhood. So fraternity and brotherhood, and they have the same meaning technically, but they have a different connotation. They have fraternity sounds much more formal, sounds much, and brotherhood sounds, close and homely. Like there's a strange kind of homely feel to Anglo-Saxon based words compared to the French and Latin based words, where they almost kind of seem cold. Like if you take the words like lonely and solitary, which at this point now have different meanings, but they at one stage had the same meaning. But it's also why we have um, we have the words that we have for animals. The words that we have for animals are the Anglo-Saxon words. So we've got cow, pig, chicken, and what else? Sheep. They're all the Anglo-Saxon words. But the words that we have for the meat of those animals, we don't call them. Well, I suppose we call them chicken, but is beef, pork, poultry. I mean, I'm cheating a little bit there, but poultry and mutton, because they come from le boeuf, le porc, le poulet, et le mouton. So because the Anglo-Saxons, the peasants would have been working more closely with the animals, whereas the only real what's the word? The interaction that the aristocracy would have with these animals would be when it was on the dinner table, and so that's why it's beef and pork and mutton. But it's cow and pig and sheep when it's in the fields. Interestingly enough, I love those kind of things. I love kind of etymology and how languages kind of evolve and change over time. And even like when we look at, I really need to oil this chair. This chair is getting louder and louder. I've had this chair for about 15 years. I've had this chair for nearly half my life. What the hell? But I love it. I think numbers are another really cool thing that you can begin to see where languages are related, where they're similar, where they're different. When I was in my early 20s, I developed this party trick of being able to count from 1 to 10 in about 20 different languages. I can still do it in a lot of languages. Not sure if I could do it in 20 anymore, but let's see if I can. Why not? It's a live stream. This kind of things that we do in live streams. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 English, Irish, Scots Gaelic, which is very similar to Irish because it actually came from Irish. Yes, Q. How are we doing? Just in time for linguistics. Let's see. French, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Spanish, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Italy, excuse me. Italian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's see. Uh, Dutch is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Which anyone listening, you can hear similar sounds to English in there. And then German, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's see, where are we going now? Czech, 1, 2, 3. Oh, what is it? 1, 2, 3. Oh, 1, 2, 3, chat. Same. No. Oh, so this is the thing. I haven't practiced them in ages. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't believe it. Right. Well, Polish is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So Czech is like that, but it's crisper. Whereas Polish is very zhu, 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 zhu. Czech has crisper sounds to it. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Let's do it quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. I think that's it. And I think Slovakian is actually quite similar. I used to be able to do it in Croatian, can't do it anymore. Russian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, same, 8, 9, 10. It's very similar. They're Slovak, or not Slovak, Slavic languages, so they're quite similar. I've lost count of where I am, but let's see, what else can I do? Hungarian. Edje katu harom nedje ut hot hid njolskilenstis. Wow. And yes, Louise, my hair, or lack thereof is right. Yeah. Well, I still have hair here. I can just take that and chuck it up there. Let's see. Turkish bir iki üç dört beş altı yedi sekiz dokuz on. I think I haven't done that one in ages. Thank you, Rachel, for teaching me that one. And then Swedish is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then Finnish is yksi, kaksi, kolme, neljä, viisi, kuusi, seitsemän, kahdeksan, yhdeksän, kymmenen. And I think Estonian is very similar to Finnish. It's like yksi, kaksi, kolme, neljä, viisi, kuusi, seitsemän, kahdeksan, yhdeksän, kymmenen. That's not correct, but it's not too far off either. And then Japanese, ichi ni san chi go roku nana hachi kyu ju. Yeah, so I lost count of how many, but you can see where languages are similar and where they're. Yeah, that's very true. I could be saying, but there'll be someone in the comments later, Hugh. There'll be someone in the comments later going, that wasn't right. There's always someone in the comments later that says that wasn't right. You know who you are. But no, I always love it because you can see what I like to call little linguistic fossils in the way that we spell our words. Like if you and English is actually a really good example of it, because there are so many letters in English that either we don't use right or we don't use at all. Like, you know, the way there's a whole pile of letters that, or a whole pile of words that aren't pronounced the way that they're spelt. Like love, for example, Love. Like, why isn't it love? But there was a great vowel shift where essentially all the vowels A-E-I-O-U sounded different. They're like A sounded like E sounded like I. That's not 100% accurate, but each one kind of everything shifted. That's why it's called the vowel shift. And so love became love. And you know, you can find a lot of words like that where you're like, why is that spelled like that? And that's why. But if you take numbers, for example, is a really good one. If you look at one, like, why is one spelt O-N-E, like, and not like one W-O-N, like phonetically, like victory, you know, one. But that's because if you look at it in other languages, it's uno or un or un or and yet, interestingly enough, we don't, because because in Swedish it's et, so we took and then in German it's ein, So it's ein, and I think there's a language where it is actually ona, which is literally how it's ONE, ona. But then you look at two, TWO, like what's that W doing in there? What is it doing in there? Because we don't pronounce it. Like it's not two, but once you start looking at other languages, like in Dutch is twee, and in German it's zwei. So they pronounce dv. Obviously, they pronounce the W as a v, but it's dwie, zwei, and in Swedish it's tvo. So they literally pronounce it. They pronounce it tvo. So where we just got lazy and we're like, it's two. But maybe that was the French connection, because what is it in French? Deux. Duh. Oh, John, stop it. But yeah, so perhaps that's actually why we stopped. I say we didn't stop anything. We were speaking Irish at that point. We were colonized later and forced to speak English and made it our own. That's another story. But yeah. Let's see. 1, 4, 3. Well, I mean, three straightforward. 4. I mean, it's quite possible that it was pronounced closer to like flower at some point. 5 makes sense. 6, 7, 8. What's going on with 8? EIGHT, echt, echt. But I mean, that. But you hear it in German. It's acht. Note on pronunciation. I know I'm not a native German speaker, but a note on pronunciation. A lot of people have a tendency when they're speaking German to acht, because they're like acht. But that's not how the German CH is. Funnily enough, that's how the Irish CH is, like acht. It is. But in German, it's acht. It's a softer. So German is not as harsh as you think it is. Although I think Dutch is. I think Dutch is acht. I'm not sure. Dutch people correct me. But yeah, so that's why it isn't ATE. It's EIGHT, like GH, because at one stage we the Anglo-Saxons the Anglo-Saxons would have said echt. They would have said ohne, two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't know what the old English of the 1 to 10 is, but it was probably something similar-ish. I can't remember Welsh except for 4. I think is pedwar. I think. I'm not sure though. But yeah. I just find it fascinating just seeing how things overlap, and you can see, because like in like the Irish language, I always love seeing how different words from different languages make their way into other languages. I mean, English is just a sponge. English just absorbs so many words and just brings them in. Like the word assassin, for example, comes from Arabic, comes from Hashari, and anyone who, I may have completely butchered that word, but anyone who has played the Assassin's Creed games knows what I'm talking about. But the Hashari were a secretive group of essentially assassins, but that's where it came from. And there's a lot of scientific words in the English language that come from Arabic. I mean, that's why we call our numbers Arabic numerals, even though they came from India, but the Arabs kind of put their name on the Arab numerals, but that's why we call our numbers Arabic numerals. But words like alcohol, like even if you listen to the word alcohol, like that, you don't find a lot of words in the English language with that sound in it, but you have it in alcohol. And something that sound is very present in a ton of Arabic is the sound within a word. Um, like Salahadin, um, who I will get to at some point in my history videos. But yeah, like alcohol. What other words? Half of the stars in the sky, like all the in Aquila, which is the or Akia, I think is how you. I don't know how to pronounce Latin sometimes, but Aquila, I think, is the painfully anglicized pronunciation of it, but I think it is Akia, because the I think Latin double L's are yeah, which the Spanish not adopted, the Spanish inherited. Um, but yeah, languages are just fascinating. But that was actually something going back to what we were originally saying about Arthurian legend, and now half of it is French. I think that's what Tolkien was trying to do. J.R.R. Tolkien, when he wrote The Lord of the Rings. Well, not so much when he wrote The Lord of the Rings, but more so when he wrote all his things about the Silmarillion and all of that, was he was trying to create or recreate or refind a mythology of England, because a lot of the mythology, particularly a lot of the Anglo-Saxon English mythology, kind of got lost, or like there's a lot of, like, it's interesting. There's a great guy. Hold on, I'll get his name, because if you're a language geek, he's really cool. Let's see, where is he now? Talk language. He does a lot about Anglos. Simon Roper. He has really cool, some really cool videos about Anglo-Saxon, and he does an entire interview in Anglo-Saxon or Old English, and it's really interesting listening to it, because there's bits of it you can pick out, bits of the words that you can understand, but a lot of it, it sounds like a foreign language. Because it is a foreign language on this island. And here I am speaking English. Although what we did, the what us Irish people did, not we Irish people, us Irish people, we made this language our own. There's certain phrases that we use that seemingly come from the Irish language, like we have a tendency, not so much anymore, but more so in older times, there has been a tendency to answer in the form of the question. Give out comes from Tower de Macht. There we go. Yeah, Ig Torchamach. Yeah. So Hugh, the wonderful Gaelegor, Hugh Carr, go follow him on YouTube. It's a great name, by the way, YouTube. I'm jealous of that name. Ig Torchamach means to give out, giving out to somebody, to, yeah. Like, it's funny, because there's some words that I wonder, are they used in other dialects of English? And because there are certain phrases that do come over, and then there's certain phrases that don't. But like the fact that we have the tendency to answer in the form of the question. So, did you go down to the shop? Oh, I did. What am I doing? Oh, I did. Did you go out last night? I did. That was great. It was really, really good. As opposed to saying yes or no, because in the Irish language, there is no yes and no. It's not ta and nil. That means is and isn't. It's not ta and nil. So, did you see him go last night? Oh, I did. That because in Irish, that's what you do. You answer in the form of the question. I'm Wakatu and Farsha. Oh, Chonak me. Yes, I saw him. But what else? I'm after doing that. What we say is that I'm only after doing that. If you have just done something, rather than saying, I have just done that. You say, I am after doing that. Someone comes out and you have hung up all of the washing and it starts to rain and you just look out and you say, I am only after putting those out. Only after. I'm after doing that. And that comes from Irish. Tam Ayanu, correct my grammar. The semantics of the Irish language and the grammar of the Irish language are very complicated. And what else? There is also, seemingly there's a possibility that the phrase "Do you dig it?" or "Can you dig it?" comes from Irish, and it's possible because the phrase "Do you understand?" in Irish is "and digging to," and it's quite possible in wherever it came from. It could have come all the way back to the 1650s when Irish were sent over to the Caribbean as indentured servants and were working alongside chattel slaves from Africa. It is possible that is where the phrase "Do you dig it?" began to spread, because it has been seen that the Irish accent, or some Irish accents, did have a big effect on Afro-Caribbean accents, where obviously, there's a massive African influence. It's the basis of the accent, but there is an element of Irish in the Afro-Caribbean accent. If you hear a lad from down the country and you hear him complaining away about that, you don't know what he's talking about. You could almost swear that he's from Jamaica if you weren't listening to it. All of a sudden, you can slip in to a Caribbean accent quite quickly. Let's see. I have to drop away for the table quiz. Best luck with the rest of the stream. Good man, YouTube. Check out Hugh Carr. He's a genius. Thank you very much for participating. But one more. There's a classic whiskey comes from the Irish language. Uisce Beatha, which means the water of life, and it's and sometimes you'll catch people say, "Oh, I'll have a wee whiskey," as opposed to whiskey, whiskey, and that's because it is Uisce Beatha. Uisce literally just means water, which says a lot for Irish people. The word for water, but I suppose Uisce Beatha, the water of life, Uisce Beatha. But yeah, there is some fun little linguistic and etymological roller coasters for you. We might talk about that again sometime. I love this stuff, very casually, but it's a lot of fun. So if you want to take part in these live and you get to ask me loads of live questions like the good old Hugh Carr did, go check him out. He's awesome. Let me just double check. If you want to take part in these live when they're here, as opposed to leaving a comment afterwards and I can't answer you live, then please go and support me on Patreon, particularly in these dark and difficult times of the coronavirus pandemic. It is tougher. And also, I also accept that it's tougher for everybody, and obviously not everybody has the cash to spare, and that's totally fair as well. But if you do and you wish to help me and help the creation of these new videos and the creation of all sorts of new content, please support me on Patreon. So patreon.com/John D. Ruddy. And there's all sorts of other goodies that you get via Patreon. You can find them But for now, folks, I wish you all health, happiness, and the best of luck with all of this. Wash your hands, maintain social distancing, and the more we can do this, the more we can do this together, the more we'll get through this, the more effectively we'll get through this. And we'll all look back on this and go, well, that was a pandemic. But for now, on that bright note, thank you so much, and I'll chat to you again soon.